And let me do this. And they're all Červená Barva Press authors. I am not doing bios tonight, but I'll just say a couple things about each reader because tonight's a celebration about 15 years. And all the authors have many books out and they have many publications. So we have published over 200 books of poetry, fiction, and translations. You can learn more about the press at www.cervenabarvapress.com. Our first reader tonight is Alexander J. Motyl. In 2009, we published Waiting by Godot, and it was a one-line play, and this is the cover. I don't know if you can see it. I'll go back. And I just cracked up because I just love the idea of a one-line play. So this is wonderful. And then in 2011, we published The Jew Who Was Ukrainian, or How One Man's Rip-Roaring Romp Through an Existential Wasteland ended in a bungled attempt to bump off the exceptionally great leader of Mother Russia. And this is that book. In 2013, we published Sweet Snow by Alexander, and it's a novel of the Ukrainian famine of 1933. And this is that book.
I remember that cover.
Mm-hmm. And next year, Alexander has another book coming out with us, and I'm very excited about it. So I give you Alexander.
Okay, thank you very much, Chloe. Could you install the share screen bit? The forthcoming chapbook is called Worries, and I'm going to read 11 poems from that, plus one from an earlier collection called Vanishing Points. And I'll try to be I'll try not to take up more than 15 minutes of your time. So here we go. You can see it? Okay. So this is obviously, well, the first poem, again, appropriate enough, is called Worries. The fragility of the universe worries me. Big bangs, little bangs, expanding matter, dark matter, black holes, wormholes, exploding stars, imploding stars. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. They say there may be multiple universes sloshing around in some cosmic soup, which only increases my worries. How can we possibly make sense of anything here when nothing makes sense there? It's enough to make us turn to tea leaves. Blame it all on Copernicus. When we were in the center of things, what could possibly go wrong? Nothing. Second poem, again, I won't tell you what it's called because you can see it's Blur. This was written last summer after I came back from Europe. How can I tell that I've been away? I have no indisputable proof, no evidence to persuade skeptics. I have plane tickets, but they could be fakes. My passport has stamps, but they are indistinct. I have sketches, but they could be dreamt. Friends welcome me back, but they could be lying. Moreover, everything looks the same. The neighborhood still smells. The bums are still in their places. The traffic is still loud. The doormen are still polite. The best I can do is say, with the least of authority, that I distinctly recall being away. I recall being there and there, but not here. I have memories of smiles and canyons and cafes, as well as of waiting rooms and hard seats. Indeed, I can still see the cornfields go by in a blur. That those encounters in buses and trains, between gaze and cornfield and blur, lasted less than a heartbeat, is all I can tell for sure. This is a poem that was inspired by a sculpture very similar to the one that's depicted here. It's found in the Morgan Library collection, and it's an ancient Egyptian sculpture. And the title of this poem is Granite. How silently you sit, how motionlessly, how patiently, your arms crossed, your toes uncurled, your knees raised high, your back straight as if you were made not of flesh and bones and cloth, but of mottled dark gray granite, sculpted and smoothed circa 380, 340 BC in Egypt during the 30th dynasty. They say you're a black figure dedicated to Amun-Ra by Thanifer, but I know better. You are smiling, but only at those who, like me, smile at you, knowing as we do that eternity writ whole is carved into the soul. If you've been to museums, and I'm sure you have, this may resonate with some of your own feelings. Paintings is the name of the poem. The paintings always stare back, even the landscapes depicting dancing gods and prancing satyrs amidst crumbling ruins adorning leafy backgrounds, and silently saying that gazing, observing, interpreting, understanding are pointless ventures, useless undertakings, doomed to failure because the paintings always stare back. Even portraits of staid burghers, genteel ladies, kings, queens, and courtesans, all sly folk prone to evading our penetrating eyes by looking elsewhere or pretending to be looking elsewhere, while knowing that pretending exposes gazers and stargazers to the penetrating side glances of vanished landscapes and long dead people, seeing through us and finding nothing. It occurred to me after I collected these poems that a number of them end with the word nothing. I'm not sure if that's meaningful, but I leave that up to you. This is a poem that was inspired by a visit to the museum, to the house of Johann Wolfgang Goethe, the famous German writer who lived in the late 18th and early part of the 19th century. He had visited Italy for about 2 years in 1780-81 and was terribly impressed with classical sculptures as well as classical art. And when he came back, he redesigned his staircase so as to be able to have the sensation of beauty. He extended the stairs and he lowered the stairs as well. There's a reference here to Friedrich, that's Friedrich Schiller, who is the other great Enlightenment poet and playwright of the same period. Both he and Goethe were close friends. To Goethe, as if gathering wild poppies in a wheat field, or approaching his beloved with a bouquet, or turning the pages of dear Friedrich's plays, or contemplating the harmony of the Palace Athena, Johann Wolfgang descends the staircase, as always elegantly attired, and as always elegantly inspired by the awe-inspiring beauty of antiquity. He extends each stockinged foot, over the polished edge, waiting for the brief sensation of dull emptiness to pass before taking to flight and alighting the step below like a sparrow in the snow, while his other foot prepares itself for its leap of faith and then glides forward in silent prayer, testimony, if any be needed, to the superiority of mind, the majesty of spirit, and the perfectibility of man. Let's move from the sublime to the slightly ridiculous. I like B movies, especially B gangster movies. And one of my favorite B actors, there are two of them, but the first one is Sterling Hayden, whom you probably know from a variety of films. One of the best is The Killing by Stanley Kubrick. You're Sterling Hayden, fedora perched on stately head, toothpick lodged in hard mouth, fat lower lips snarling with disgust, blank stare that wilts flowers, crumpled shirt with white collar, unshaved mug and tall forehead, clenched teeth and clenched fists that ask later and pummel first. It don't matter whether you're crooked or crop, Sterling. You're always tough. You never give up, 'cause it's never enough, 'cause you never stop yearning. Since it's your way or no way, then it's gotta be your way. Then it's gotta be mayhem. Then it's gotta be Sterling Hayden. If you think of Sterling Hayden as a B-movie actor, then Broderick Crawford probably deserves to be called a C-movie actor. I'm reading this from an earlier collection. It was specifically requested by a close friend who's also an aficionado of B gangster movies. For Broderick Crawford, I know it's going to be a swell boomy B movie. Let me start over. I know it's going to be a swell B movie when you're in it, Broderick. No A-level hokum pretending to be art. That's better left to Bogart. He never could get a real B, could he? Too many trench coats, too many fedoras, too many dreamboats, too many senoras. But not for you, B-man. You smoke B cigarettes. You snarl B snarls. You glare B glares. You breathe B breaths. You don't get the girl ever, and she don't want you never. There ain't nothing about you, pal, except your being. And that's the thing about you, big guy. When it's all or nothing, I know your call. You always junk the all while standing firm on nothing. This poem, written recently, was inspired by my daughter's first steps in the summer of 1986. We were visiting Vienna, and she and I were on the grass observing the peacocks in the city park of Vienna. That's the one with the famous Johann Strauss statue depicted here. And this, of course, is Steps, and it's dedicated to Katya. It was on the grass between the statues of the penguins and the statue of Strauss that you took your first steps. Johann's violin was silent. The shadows were long, and the indolent cour salon shimmered in the afternoon sun. I was on my knees, watching the light-headed peacock sidestep the Viennese. And then you walked. You walked and fell, and then you walked and fell again. As you did, it caught my eye that the grass had ceased to grow. Just why was clear. Gravity had been upended, just as God's universe had expanded to accommodate yet another quickened heartbeat and to let yet another human footstep resonate with the peacock's light step. One of my favorite genre of paintings is those of Saint Sebastian. There's even a song about him by Patti Smith. Anyway, this is dedicated to Saint Sebastian, who's depicted in that particular photograph. Sometimes the arrows appear to pain you. Sometimes you seem indifferent. And sometimes they appear to give you pleasure. Which is it, Sebastian? You don't have to answer. Saints are entitled not to comment on art. So stay quiet, smile enigmatically, grimace ecstatically, and reach out to God in ways that unsaintly humans can never understand or replicate or even imagine. Alas, we are arrowless. We are bereft of rays of wisdom that will illuminate your eyes when the shafts penetrate your limbs and torso, and the arrowheads gleam bloodlessly and knowingly, confidently heralding the kingdom of heaven on earth, and hinting at an even greater miracle, the kingdom of earth in heaven. I live on 15th Street in New York, and just across the street from my building is Stuyvesant Park, or Stuyvesant Square, and there's a statue of Peter Stuyvesant, which I visit every day in the morning, and that's the statue depicted above. O Peter, O Stuyvesant, once Governor General of New Netherland, now a lifeless piece of gleaming metal, perched on a chipped pedestal in a leafless square amidst spry sparrows and curious squirrels. What do you espy as you guard the loveless monster you nursed in its infancy? Your Bowery is no more, good sir, victim of glass and rubber. You are gone too, interred as Petrus in St. Mark's vault, commemorated and ignored, forgotten and unknown to the faithless millions who wouldn't be here if it weren't for your faith in you. Does your iron heart cry? Does your steel soul sigh? Do you wonder which devil was at fault? No, you stand still and straight, one-legged, impassive, all-knowing, fatalistic about fate, a faint smile on your lips, a squint in your eyes, as indifferent to those indifferent to you as they are different from you and the world you and I once knew. Two more poems and I'm done. These have all been inspired, well, you'll know why, by the events of the last few months. Similes. In times like these, we search for supple similes. I used to say it felt like hiding in a bunker or an air raid shelter, waiting for the bombs to fall. A good friend asked what life was like in my cloistered cell. I liked that like and said I felt like monkish Merton. Another likened life to Leningrad's siege, to which I said, if fortune smiles on us, ours will last 3 months and not 3 years. Still another spoke of solitary, which made me think of Cagney's grunts in some movie. More such likes will dawn us in times like these, I fear. And as the dead add to the dead, we'll long for simple smiles, but subtle for supple similes instead. And this is the final poem, called Sleep, perhaps appropriately so. Life used to be a scream. Now it's a screen. Every day we decay, every day we speak to things, we hear voices beyond walls, we walk on eggshells, we long for life beyond pings. Like air, I am everywhere. There is too much of my body, too much of my legs, too much of my chest. My thoughts surround me, heavy and sticky like jars of honey, like cans of chili. It's the end of the world. Armageddon, the apocalypse, the decline of the West, the war of the worlds. As oceans rise, as cultures decays, as cities collapse, may it rain for 40 days. But not for 40 nights. At night, we refuse to weep. At night, we defiantly sleep. And I thank you.
Thank you so much, Alexander. And that
Thank
last
you.
poem, oh my gosh. So Tam is here, so I'm so excited that she made it on okay. And so she is our next reader. And in 2010, we published a book by Tam called Triage. And here it is here. I don't know if there's kind of a glare here, but if you can kind of see it. And I have known Tam for years, so I'm really excited to have her here and read for us. She was also co-editor of Off the Grid Press, and the books were just absolutely stunning, still are, of course. And so I'm very happy to introduce you to Tam.
Is that better? Am I unmuted?
Yes, you are.
Okay, you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to read today from a group of, yes? A group of poems that's called Ceremony of What Is Mine. And they're all in the voice of a, so they're all in one voice. As you probably know, Guantanamo Bay detention camp is still open. It's now under Obama, it went down from 245 inmates to 41. But Trump, as he would, has promised to keep it open indefinitely. So anyway, that's a little bit of background. And here are the poems. The first one is, and they have no titles. The titles are the first line of the poem. The long day is what you have. Its small turns and alterations, lamplight at dusk, static from the guard's radio, one meal, then the next. It is not yours. Do not count this day, another and another, or any other. Okay, this is the second poem. This shadow that sleeps when I sleep, its ankles, elbows, neck, ears, shoulders, thighs, hidden shocks of hair, will rise in minutes to dress at the siren's sound. This body I have worn for 34 years shrinks. I am no one, becoming thinner. As a small boy, I played on the kitchen floor, pouring lentils from gourd to gourd, sorting yellow from red, picking out the pebbles. Having no sisters, I carried water from the well. The garden was mine. I knew when to pick, which to peel, what skins to save for soup. We had more than most, and after meals, my mother would boast to no one, pinching the layer of fat stored around my belly. Little one, here you have extra for times of drought, famine, and war. This is the next poem. Mother, had you seen it, you would have wept as I did. pages of the Koran slick with excrement, the book tossed by a guard into the latrine. Rashad, our most devout, ran to fish it out and gently laid it in the sink, let water rinse its befouled pages until they came clean again, chaste, some of the words erased, but most clear enough to read. The yard was silent, but for the sound of running water. All inmates, even the unbelievers, stood with heads bowed, staring at the dust, not knowing what to say, what would come next. Rashad was put in solitary. As the sun sank, we who were left shuffled to our rest. This is the next poem. I clipped these 10 gray toenails, a ceremony of what is mine that grows like hair, fingernails, that I use to scratch, pluck, pin down, flick ash and bugs, and choose to burn with my cigarette, red ember, my weapon, my light. This body dwells in me, I in it, myself both soil and sun. Is there a last day? Why wait for what I don't know? I meld with these bars that hold me, keep me whole. We have a cat that prowls the yard. The guards like him. He kills lizards and rats and the small snakes they call culebra. We call him Hunter. He is fat and glossy. When full, he lies long in the sun and cleans his kingly coat. Suppose death came, a visitor through checkpoint. They'd search him, ask his name, not recognize the curl of his lip, the waxy skull with no hair. Not know who he was. His papers were good. Come for a look around, a chance to greet the weakest among us. We welcomed him as best we could. Someone with news, someone from outside, journalist, doctor, lawyer. Later we learned he was all of these and more. Face a kaleidoscope, mouth a slit, a curl, an O, full of lies we've already come to know. They came with the food, the beds, the clothes. Some come freely through the wire mesh, small tarantulas in black fur, who mean me no harm, frogs, slippery clowns who swim in my water bucket or crouch at the bottom to cheer me on. My favorites, the iguanas, are bold warriors, parading up the side of my cage like dragons of yellow, green, and gray. I feed them small beads of bread. Scarlet hummingbirds, no bigger than my fingernail, come and go through the mesh with a whisper only I can hear. And I have 3 more. It was like that, as on a stage. The knife's teeth, the knife he saved for months in some rat hole, the red pool. No tracks but the lizards who came later, shy. They mark his bravery and print the news with their tiny feet. The guards never fly the flag at half-mast when one of ours takes his own life. Day is done with its bells, sirens, unfinished meals. The mush they call food sticks to my teeth. I don't eat. Smell alone tells me what degree of rankness I've been served. I've learned instead to treasure my hunger. And this is the last one. I would rather eat grass, dust, paper, or pebbles. Dirt has more minerals than these canned potatoes and mashed gray carrots with their aftertaste of gasoline. The guards bring me cold, uncooked rice, kernels hard as sand. When they tear pages from the Quran, we eat nothing and share our hunger with brothers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tam.
You're welcome.
And our next reader is Ralph Pennel. We published his book, A World Less Perfect for Dying in 2015. And here it is. And he is the founder and editor of Midway Journal. So I give you Ralph.
Hello, hello. All right, everybody can hear me, yes? Okay. First of all, thank you, Gloria, for hosting and for all the work that you do in the greater Boston area. And thank you, Alex and Tam, for reading. Those are great poems. It was great to hear your work. And thank you for everybody who has shown up tonight. It's always nice to read before a crowd, and especially nice to read before so many of your familiar and beautiful faces. So as Gloria mentioned, I'm going to be reading from the book that I published with her press, A World Less Perfect for Dying In. And then I'm going to actually end with a brand new piece that's not in this collection, but everything else that I'm going to read tonight is from this. And I know there's a few people in the audience who've heard me read before, so just for you all, I have selected a few that I have never read at a reading before, or have only read once, and I know you haven't heard them. But there are some mainstays, some traditional pieces in here that I will read with. And I'm going to start with the poem Schuster. And before I read this poem, all I want to say is I have never, ever, 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 ever owned a pet. Just going to put that out there. True story. Schuster. One summer, the neighbors directly behind my grandparents' house brought home a rooster. My two brothers and I named him Schuster. We spent the whole season strutting and clucking back and forth along the chain link fence that divided the lots into yards. In return, Schuster would strum the fence with his sharp beak and bark us back into the middle of the lawn. One day, after lunch, Schuster did not come no matter which tone we called in or how hard we rattled the fence. The seed we scattered just before going in, still spotting the dry Tennessee soil. Later that night, dining with the neighbors, we found him. Only we felt we knew him too well. And after the table was cleared, we slipped the bones into a plastic bag and took them out into the dark. Kneeling beside the fence in the faint glow of the porch light that barely reached this part of the yard, we three dug into the ground with my grandfather's trowel to a depth we felt would keep our friend safe from more harm. We patted the earth down with our feet and sprinkled loose dirt over the tiny mound, not to hide what we had done, but because we felt revealed. This, the first lesson in who we would make ourselves available for. So much becoming us from so little. We bowed our heads, each offering his own prayer. Then we just walked away, each to his own room, near but not too near. Satellites waiting for sleep. So the next poem that I'm going to read is Jesus Was a Handsome Man. I have two things to say. First is my dad and Elvis actually went to high school together. My dad did not like Elvis, but that says way more about my dad than it does about Elvis. And the second thing I want to say is my mom does not believe in dinosaurs. Again, true story. And the reason my mom does not believe in dinosaurs is she was raised in a very Southern Baptist home, very traditional, and dinosaurs aren't in the Bible. And so all this aside, As you can imagine, the Jesus and the Elvis get a little mixed up in my brain sometimes. Like sometimes I hear Jesus saying, thank you very much, right? In Elvis's voice. Here's the poem. Jesus was a handsome man. It's clear to see locks of pure light, eyes and the oceans in them, perfect for wading in. Elvis was a handsome man too, swimming with fire, a voice too free to keep as his own, roaming alone without him now. My father knew him, Memphis, Tennessee, where no one feels sick at home beside the river, that treacherous ride into the Gulf. And when he sang, we were perfect sanctuaries, desire's desire seated there. Elvis knew Jesus, raised his voice into perfect clouds with perfect rain over our heads to reach him. Somewhere between the heavens and the fields, we are sure to die. And yes, I mean my father too. An Elvis refrain astride the carriage of our tongues, the earth holding us close with an elegant treason. Okay, so the next piece, I have actually never read at a reading before, so this is a brand new experience. And it is on request that I am reading this one. So the title is Because We Were Assigned to Write Bad Fiction. I actually wrote this after taking a workshop with Michael Martone quite a few years ago. Because we were assigned to write bad fiction. We were trying to write something bad, to explore what makes bad fiction. The woman with hair like olive branches wrote to her grandfather, a kindly man who whittled wood on his front porch. The letter she wrote was filled with the voice of the young girl she knew he imagined when he thought of her. She read the fiction to us as if she had to articulate that this was clearly not the woman she was, that clearly the tone in her voice carried the weight of each unspoken word. And when she looked up from her small notebook, the room was silent for just a little while longer. We each envisioned him opening that very letter, his whittling set aside, the knife blade sledding through the glued lip of the envelope flap, the starling he had been carving, waiting patiently in his lap. In that silence, the pain of her love rose into the air. What the letter didn't say was this, that the olive tree loved a woman, that she never planned to marry, that he would never raise her children into the very lap his starling rested in as he read. And then each of us imagined the letter we would write, our own omission, branding our love, no matter where or whom we loved, no matter how well or how poorly we loved. The earth rotating us away from that very moment, dislodging us from the story that would surely save our lives, if we felt the slightest pull from it at all. So the next piece, I believe I've only read once before in a reading, is titled So Much Good Weather. I sit down beside you at the kitchen counter with 2 mugs filled with good warm coffee. Gus is between our stools. Each of us reach to pet his head, scratch under his chin, talk about how everyone needs this, a good dog, nodding as we say it. The back door is open, though it is a little too cool. It is unseasonably warm for New England in November, so that we keep the door open, our breath misting just a little. The days as nice as this one coming to an end, even now while the 2 of us talk and pet, say everyone, when we really mean ourselves, when what we want to say is love, how everyone needs love, how it fills the space we are dreaming in and still fits here between us within these narrow kitchen walls, like so much good weather. to have and to hold. For that brief moment, I watch as you fit your hands around mother's throat. Press your thumbs against her trachea, your face calm as if squeezing a melon. I stand and speak your name, Charles. You pause, thinking the voice has somehow passed up through your grip. You release her neck, hold your hands up to the light. And then it comes again, my small voice, Charles. Nothing more is said. You turn to me, hands still raised, two shallow and empty bowls you have never been able to fill before now. Calmly, mother turns her back and walks away. You return to the sink, submerge your hands into the soap and pull the stopper to let the water drain, revealing the dishes cleaned and ready to dry. You lift all of them, one at a time, drying rack filling slowly until you are done. You wipe your hands, wad the towel into a ball, a small new planet to toss aside, and it is over. Everything is over. A comprehensive list of what the earth owes me for my time here so far. Warmth. A fire that reaches the heart first, consuming the flesh from the inside. Liberty. Not freedom, but liberty, so that I may call my voice home. Fearlessness. Or at the very least, a heart larger than my fist, that my heart may always win. Love, yes, love too, but because it needed me. A place to die in, one with clean corners, one with even walls, one perfect for perfect slumber. Everything I once believed in living on without me, like trees that have lived through winter after winter after winter without their leaves, without their beautiful, beautiful leaves. Okay, so I have just two left. I'm going to read one more from the book, and then I'll read a brand new one that's part of my new collection. So this last one I'll read from the book is a nearly true poem about postcards from the MoMA she never knew she wanted before today. And yes, I do mean the Museum of Modern Art. One was a photo of itself. On the back it read, "Wish you were here." One was a painted brick worth its weight in postage. One was a flock of birds that spelled out her name when it flew overhead. One was a series of books, each with a single highlighted word she had to find to glean its meaning. One was a flower bed, just because. Together they applied for NEA to support their correspondence, then wrote grant letters to each other that explained the need for art in their exchange. Eventually, the stacks of letters became the art the NEA supported. MoMA set her postcards on fire. The smoke rose into the clouds, which made it rain. And when it reached her, she could feel the words in the drops on her skin. They plucked at her like a harp. Once MoMA sent an EKG, the caption read, "This here, this peak right here is the exact moment when I thought of you." MoMA sometimes whispers her name into paper. So when she holds it to a candle, she believes the shadow, like knowing of heartbeats before the heart. And finally, this one is called Chronicler. It starts with an epigraph. Abraham begat Isaac, and Isaac begat Jacob, and Jacob begat Judas and his brothers. Matthew, Book 1, verse 2, the Holy Bible, King James Version. I do not know the names by heart, but they are in my heart. Each word I write becomes a name, shivers in my tongue. When he said, "Follow me," my feet knew before me, and I was at his heels, coins still pinched between my fingers, before I said no and followed anyway. Mitiha, he claimed me, laid me back into the river, still cool for the season. I opened my mouth at the shock. When he pulled me back, water burning my lungs, the names were there, all of them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ralph. And can we give all the readers another hand of applause? Thank you so much for reading and celebrating. And thank you so much, everyone, for being here tonight. And tomorrow at 7 p.m., we have Kathleen Aguero and Jen Knox and Joni Reese. So I hope you will join us for that reading. And I just want to close with thanking a few people and the Červená Barva Press staff that are here tonight supporting the readings and the readers. And that's RJ Jeffries, Renuka Raghavan, Karen Friedland, and my intern Zachary Cook is here. And he has a few more days left, so I bet he's happy. And also, I would like to acknowledge Joy, who is helping me be organized. Yes, organized. And also helped me a lot going nonprofit soon. So thank you, everyone, for being here. And that's it. So good night. Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much.
Bye. Okay, bye.